Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCarthy, and Tom Hayes.
I've never been on a bench where you are in total control of a game for 30 minutes and then play the last 10 as if they're 5 guys from the local rec center that just met.
He and Lorenzo will share the coordinator title. John will have the back guys, the defensive backs and linebackers in the pass game, and Coach Ward will have the front, but they'll work together.
We got to make good decisions offensively. I do think we can get up and down the floor and use our overall team speed to our advantage.
It's an exciting Monday night here on Sports Talk as we have got plenty to talk about. You heard our voices there, Frank Martin from USC, lamenting the blown 12-point lead in the second half at Vanderbilt. USC football coach Steve Spurrier introducing John Hoke as co-defensive coordinator alongside Lorenzo Ward and Dawn Staley. The talk of South Carolina. The USC women, number 1 team in the country, tonight playing at number 2 Connecticut, 8 o'clock on ESPN2. Steve Spurrier opened up his press conference by saying this will be short because all the attention should be on the USC women tonight. It's getting great coverage all across the country, of course, for those who follow women's basketball. And basketball in general, anytime you've got a 1 versus a 2, it's a big deal. And the question, guys, is South Carolina is number 1 for weeks. They have fended off all comers in various forms or fashion. This will be the biggest test to date against a team that has been in hundreds of these kind of games, literally over the decades. Does South Carolina have enough to go up there and pull off the victory, which will go down as one of the great wins in South Carolina athletic history?
Let's put it this way. They're not that old. But, yeah, the team itself has been through that.
They won the championship last year. So.
Well, yeah. That was last year.
Yeah.
Irresistible force meets the immovable object. A 22-game winning streak against a 29-game home winning streak. To me, this is a game where you take mental notes because I'm not so certain the loser of this game does not win the national championship, and the winner of this game loses the national championship game. The big thing is for South Carolina to get in this game, win or lose, learn from it, because let's face it, if they play the way they play normally, both teams, they'll meet again sometime down the line.
Yeah, it might not be you don't want to lose, but there's worse things that could happen to you than losing a game like this. You can learn from a loss, and it's just another game for UConn. They do this every night almost, and they've won championships. They have a guard that I think's been the Final Four MVP twice. So this is nothing new for South Carolina. This is the biggest game in their program's history. One of the biggest games in school history, regardless of sport, for South Carolina.
I will add this caveat, though. Connecticut National Championship has run through a tougher gauntlet in the Big East, which they have not done in the last 2 years because they played in the American Conference, which does not have the strength of teams that the old Big East has, and has that kind of slackened off a little bit for Connecticut. We'll see tonight as far as their program is concerned.
Phone number 800-956-7266. Dial us up. Let us hear from you tonight. Plenty to talk about. Your thoughts on USC women and UConn tonight, 1 versus 2, 8 o'clock tip-off. Your thoughts on John Hoke now officially joining the USC staff. Steve Spurrier seems re-energized about his football team. He really seems excited and fired up about what has happened. I think he has a feeling of a security blanket there with John Hoke coming in, somebody that he has worked with great success in the past. He has a track record of success, and I think he likes what he's done combining the two. And, of course, having co-coordinators is really no big deal. It's happened all around college football on both the offense and the defensive side. So no great shock that he would do something along those lines in trying to reform his defensive staff and stick to his guns by not firing anybody. Grady Brown is being moved off the 9-man assistant coach roster, but he will still be an integral part of the defense, working on the defensive side of things, working with the secondary. And if another position opens up on the staff, he could slide back into that spot. But no other changes are planned by Spurrier. Every other coach on the staff currently, he plans on them being with the football team moving forward. So he did seem really fired up, really excited about this incoming class as well. You'll hear from Spurrier. You'll hear from Hoke. You'll hear from Lorenzo Ward. To sum it up, everybody seems happy. Hoke will call the defensive plays, and he'll do it from the sideline, and Ward will be upstairs. Hoke will deal with the defensive side on the back side of it from the linebackers and the secondary, and Ward's going to handle the defensive front, overseeing that along with the assistant coaches. So everybody seems to be happy about this move moving forward. We'll hear from them coming up. Also coming up on the program, USC basketball coach Frank Martin talking about the loss to Vandy when the Gamecocks had a 12-point lead. Could not hang on despite the record and despite the way things have gone. He definitely believes it's a better basketball team today than it was a year ago, that they've made progress. He points to the fact that they've led 6 of 8 games on the road, is what he said, at one time or another. They are having a hard time finishing. They're having a hard time finding that one person or those 2 people that they can go to down the stretch in a tight game who they can count on to get them a basket, and that is something they've got to resolve. We'll hear from Brad Brownell. Similarly, Clemson loses the lead at Miami yesterday, falls victim to a 13-0 run. Gamecocks fell victim to an 18-0 run at Vanderbilt. That was a costly loss for the Tigers. Really could have enhanced their position in the ACC standings with Notre Dame coming in tomorrow night, but they let one get away down at Miami. So we'll hear from him. And then 7:30 tonight, former Gamecock guard Larry Davis will join us to talk about Dean Smith. Larry Davis was the first player ever recruited out of the state of South Carolina and signed by Dean Smith. So he has a very special, even though he didn't finish his career at North Carolina, was only there for 2 years before transferring to USC, he still had a very special relationship and special connection with Dean Smith, and we'll talk about that with him coming up. Larry, now the head basketball coach at Northwestern High School after winning a state championship at Louisville High School last year. So we got all that coming up, a little bit of recruiting as well. Phone calls 800-956-7266. Email back at sportstalksc.com. We'll check out some of your Twitter comments. Our Twitterologist in the house, keeping a close watch on that. We'll check that out as well. Our Twitter feed, our Twitter timeline at SportsTalkSC. The website is sportstalksc.com, and on Facebook, Sports Talk Radio Network. Anybody got anything they want to say before we dive into
It was a little awkward watching Lorenzo Ward up there as well, at least watching it on the video stream.
Mhm.
And I thought he handled himself really throughout, not just today, but this entire process had to be very difficult for him.
Mhm.
He was taking slings and arrows from every direction. And, you know, I'm not saying not all of that was justified. Some of it certainly was. But to blame every defensive woe on Lorenzo Ward is not fair without giving him credit for what's happened in the years prior. And there were other things that hurt the Gamecocks last year, but he never lost his composure with the media. I mean, he got asked some tough questions,
but he has to be held accountable because he hired the staff. All those defensive hires were his. And if those guys weren't getting the job done in some form or fashion, ultimately it comes back on
Well,
him.
he's
But
a
I will
coordinator.
point it out. Yeah, I will point out that they were dealing with a bunch of young players, and simply because of the aging process, John Hoke, along with Lorenzo Ward, should have a better defense this year. With the influx of the new talent, the aging of the guys returning, they should be a better defense just because of that.
And let's face it, it was a team, their youth hurt them from a mental standpoint because they lose confidence very quickly. Because we saw them in a series of plays play outstanding defense. Then once one domino fell, they hold a hang their heads. It's tremendous. For South Carolina and Clemson's basketball teams, let me submit to you film of the last 2 years of San Diego State. Reason being, I'm one of those guys on the weekend, if I can't sleep, I want to see what other teams are doing, why they're ranked. And I have seen the ranked San Diego State teams not be able to hit the side of a barn for 10, 15 minutes. But guess what? They completely shut down the other team and wouldn't let them score. So you saw a lot of 48, 45 games from San Diego State, but they were ranked inside the top 25 because they totally just refused to lose. South Carolina and Clemson, psychologically, if the ball does not go down, they let their defense suffer. And then they suffer even more when they lose confidence and then they lose the lead. I think really these teams have to realize their bread and butter is on defense. They can still win with defense. And if the ball is dropping, that's gravy because that means they're probably going to win that basketball game. I think both teams, if they shoot 40% of the game, Corn, should have a chance to win every game they play, besides maybe Kentucky or Virginia or Duke. But other than that, I think these teams psychologically have to feel better about their offense than they do because I think they hang their heads a lot when the shots don't go down.
All right, couple of quick notes, and we'll get to your telephone calls. Women's top 25 out today. USC still number 1 ahead of UConn. USC receiving 26 first-place votes to 8 for the Huskies. Baylor number 3, followed by Notre Dame, Maryland, Tennessee, Florida State, Oregon State, Louisville, and Kentucky in your top 10. Dawn Staley will remain as an assistant for the USA women's national team through the 16 Olympic Games. That was announced today by USA Basketball. And in the Big South, the player of the week, co-player of the week, is from Winthrop, and it is guard Andre Smith, along with Gardner-Webb forward Jerome Hill. The freshman of the week is Presbyterian forward Deshaun Murray. And Greg Hardy, not going to jail, case dismissed. Panthers defensive end involved in domestic abuse allegations against a former girlfriend. Those charges dismissed today by the district attorney. He had previously been found guilty by a judge for assaulting his ex-girlfriend and appealed to have a new trial in front of a jury. The prosecution cited a settlement between Hardy and the woman as one of the reasons to dismiss the case. In addition, the woman did not show to the trial, with the prosecution saying the state was unable to locate her. The judge presiding over the case accepted this dismissal. Of course, it does not mean he'll be back with the Panthers
I would
next
be
year.
shocked. It's almost unfair to call him a Panther defensive end. Now he's a free agent by all accounts.
Yeah. All right, to the phones we'll jump, and we'll get to your calls, 800-956-7266. Let's begin with Ron in North Augusta. Hi, Ronnie. Welcome into Sports Talk.
Hey, Phil. Okay, mate. Pro, how y'all tonight?
We are great. How are you?
Friday night, I was thinking to myself, I said, they sure do seem to be playing this promo about K-Mac being the sportscaster of the year. And then I realized K-Mac was the only one in there Friday night. So I assume he was the one that was putting this up on the air about every 30 seconds.
I don't know.
I don't baby K-Mac. I'll be proud of that, too. I was going to tell you, Bill, old Billy down in Florence, he done had me pretty depressed calling him about all these 12 stars Clemson got.
Yeah.
But then I saw the state paper over there. We've got our next Lattimore, next Clowney. So it's just going to be an awful lot of next Alshon Jeffrey.
All right, hang on.
Get that promo ready again, Pope.
Hang on one second. Be right back. All right, Steve Spurrier and the gang coming up here at the bottom of the hour break. Let's get back to one of his ex officio assistants, Ronnie, still with us on the line from North Disgusta. Ronnie, what else you got for us?
I'm over here now, me and Cockett breaking down film right now, getting ready.
Oh, Lord.
For the spring to get. I was just saying, it looks like it may be the two most talented teams to ever take the field after I saw what we got coming in the other day, too. I didn't realize we had all of that coming in. I reckon I've been listening to the wrong people.
Well, I mean, it's not a bad class.
I think they got
if you go by the rankings and all that kind of stuff, which is really just for conversational purposes, it's right about where USC normally is. I mean, occasionally the Gamecocks will pop up with a class 9th, 10th, 11th, but typically they're 18th, 19th, 20th, and they've done pretty well for the most part over the most recent past with the people they've brought in. It's a good-looking class. It addresses their needs. Got a good quarterback prospect, a couple of good running back prospects, all those defensive ends, some receivers that look good. Again, everything is on paper right now, but these guys live up to how they've played to this point in their careers and continue to improve. They'll be just fine.
Hey, Phil, I'll make this quick, but you asked overnight, what does it feel like to be a Carolina fan right now? I can promise you, for an obnoxious fan like me that likes to run his mouth when we win, you don't want me saying on the air what it's been like. Y'all have a good night.
I know it's been a little painful.
And Ronnie, just so you know, those promos play out of our corporate office. We don't have any control over those.
Right,
although now that I know they
right.
exist, I didn't even know this exists. I'm going to have to request it to be played for all commercials. Maybe bumpers coming in and out.
You can put it in your iPad.
What is it? I'm curious.
You can put it in your little iPad or whatever, and you can play it over and over to yourself.
We don't get to hear the commercials.
Right. When we go to break, we don't hear a thing.
I have no idea.
It goes
I can
dead.
freestyle it coming out of breaks if you want me to.
That's okay.
Ad-lib.
We're fine not knowing what it says or who they're talking about. Quickly, we go to John in Hilton Head, a great place to be. Be down there a couple of weeks playing golf. John, how are you?
I'm doing good. I really appreciate you fellows spending a little bit of time tonight in conversation about Coach Smith at North Carolina. I was a walk-on freshman up there years and years ago, and had 1 year there in the program. And I just want to say that there'll be a lot of talk for days and days about his accomplishments on the court, but the man's greatness really was off the court, and I just hope that everybody will remember that he fought for and spoke up for a lot of causes back in the early part of his coaching career there that were not only very unpopular in the South, but also he was not very popular because he had some rough years to start with there in North Carolina. Some very rough years as far as winning and losing.
Yeah, they hung him in effigy one time, but I didn't realize this, and thank you. Took him 21 years to win his first national championship. As great as he was, he came on board in 61, didn't win a national championship to 82.
But when you win all those ACC tournament titles, when it was one and only one, that was almost bigger than the national title in North Carolina.
Of course, he had to go up against a guy named Wooden, who was winning a bunch of titles back then.
But anyway, yeah, John Hoke, I think there's no secret. I've mentioned we're going to add a coach. But anyway, yeah, John Hoke, I think there's no secret. John Hoke, I think there's no secret. I've mentioned we're going to, well, we're recruiting for the future and looking forward to this year at the same time.
In Columbia today, Steve Spurrier formally introduced John Hoke at a press conference at Williams-Brice. The two were joined by Lorenzo Ward. Ward and Hoke now co-defensive coordinators. Here is what it sounded like as Spurrier made the introduction.
John Hoke, I think there's no secret. I've mentioned we're going to add a coach probably after recruiting was over, and we did. And the timing was such that John was able to come, and we were together, 13 years ago, University of Florida. The 3 seasons, John was defensive coordinator. We actually won 2 divisions and 1 SEC, and our best team, the 2001 team, didn't win much of anything. We finished 3rd in the nation, won the Orange Bowl, but did not win the division, did not win the SEC. Just one of those years, had number 1 team in the conference in offense and defense, and didn't win much that year. Just lost some close ones that knocked us out. But anyway, he's been in the NFL the last 13 years and coaching secondary with the Houston Texans and Chicago Bears. So timing worked out. He was able to come. He and Lorenzo will share the coordinator title, and John will have the back guys, the defensive backs and linebackers in the pass game, and Coach Ward will have the front 7, and our spur guy, the nickelback, mostly in the run game, but they'll work together. It all goes together, as we all know. So they wanted to come in and say a few words, but other than that, again, the big story today is hopefully going to be our women's basketball team, hopefully having a big victory up at UConn. All right, John, you want to say a few words?
Just real quick, just very excited to be here, excited to work with these players, these coaches, a great opportunity. And just a wonderful opportunity for me personally to get back with Coach. Like he said, we've known each other for 16 years now, and just very excited to be down here and to work with this football team and these players and these coaches. So really looking forward to it.
All right, Coach Ward's here with us, the other coordinator. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, just like to thank Coach for the opportunity again to we went through a tough season, but he saw fit to keep Coach Ward on the staff, and I'm looking forward to working with Coach Hope and learn some new things.
Yeah, as everyone knows, we had a difficult year on defense, and we need to just do a little something different, and that's my job as the head coach. Let's do something different, and I think we've added, hopefully, something that will really help us. We didn't do very well on special teams at times either, and we're going to do some little things different there also that hopefully will help us become a lot better special team football group also. But anyway, we're in position. I think our defensive staff's in excellent shape. I can spend most all my time with the quarterback and receivers and offense like I've done my whole coaching career, and away we'll go. And let me just say this. Those guys that didn't sign with South Carolina, fans, please don't worry about them guys. The guys who signed with us are the guys that want to come here and want to be here. And we're fired up about this recruiting class. It is a good bunch of players. And we were looking at all the incoming defensive players that have a chance to really help us next year. So we got a bunch of fired up coaches and players, wonderful attitude on this team right now as far as the off-season program. So we're anxious to get started. Although spring ball will not start till March 17, the NCAA allows a couple of hours of meetings. So we'll get started meeting with our players, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll get a couple hours of meeting time there, and then March 17th is when spring practice starts. Okay, anybody got a few quick questions? Josh has got one. Okay, Josh.
For whoever this question pertains to, how will game days work in terms of calling the defense? How will the practice?
I'll take that one. I talked to Bobby Stoops about how he did that. He was actually a co-coordinator at Kansas State when I hired him, and he mentioned that Coach Snyder had the secondary guy is the primary play caller, like I'm the primary play caller for our offense, although at times I've delegated out a little bit. At times Coach Steve Jr. and Coach Elliott have called plays, and he'll be on the phone with Coach Ward, but the primary play caller will be our secondary coach.
John, you'll be downstairs, I take it. Are you a downstairs guy?
Probably so. We haven't really talked through all that yet, but that's where I imagine to start out.
Do you have a base defense? Do you have a system that you want to install, or will y'all kind of work with what you
I think
got
we're going to
here?
work together. I think as much as you can keep the continuity the same with the players from a terminology standpoint is good, but there'll be some differences.
Steve, is there somebody on the staff who's, I don't know, his duties get shifted? He's no longer.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah, that's what is unfortunate. But I was able to keep all of our guys. And, Coach Grady Brown, his title will be quality control with defense, and he'll be like an assistant defensive coach, but he'll be over there working with our defensive staff. The NCAA has allowed for those type players, and we may add another quality control guy in the near future.
Just what was the process of moving Grady off and the decision?
Now, see, that's the kind of questions I'm not going into. Somebody had to move off, okay? Somebody had to move off. That's the only answer I can give you. Nobody particularly. Somebody had to move off, and hopefully he can move back on the 9 if somebody leaves from somewhere. Simple as that.
John, I was going to ask you, been in the NFL for a number of years now. Why the change back to college? Was it just you feel like you'd run your course in the NFL, or?
Really, it was just the opportunity that was presented to me as much as anything else. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. You could probably talk to a lot of coaches in the NFL that to have the opportunity to come here and coach with Coach Spurrier in this program would be very interested in this.
Steve, you said at one point you talked to a bunch of people that called you looking to see if you needed any help or were hiring. How many folks did you talk to, would you imagine, since the end of the season?
I didn't offer anybody the job except John.
How many people would you imagine reached out to you?
I don't want to get into that. Under 5. How's that? So it wasn't okay.
Lorenzo, can you talk about just how you handle this new situation as far as going from being the guy overseeing the defense to kind of sharing the duties and just, coaching ego and how you kind of have to adjust things and working with somebody who's coming in new?
Well, I think it's as for with anything in life, you have to go through changes, and it's how you handle them that makes you the person that you are. And so, there's a lot of coordinators that have been coordinators that are position coaches now. There are a lot of head coaches that have been head coaches that are position coaches now. So it's just those things that happen.
Alabama, Clemson had a coordinator that's now the coordinator at LSU, but I'm hoping that all of our coaches are going to benefit 2-3 years down the road. 2-3 years down the road. And when you're in the coaching profession, we go at a year at a time, but we also look 2, 3, 4 years down the road. That's why recruiting is so important. You look down the road. And as an assistant coach, you do the same thing. And 3 years from now, who knows where we'll all be. But now the job for all of us is let's make this 2015 South Carolina team the very best we all can do it. And I really believe we've got the total commitment of the coaching staff, and everyone knows their assignment and their role. And now let's go see if we can win an SEC someday. That's still something we've never done. So I really believe it's a doable deal. Didn't look very doable last year at times, but we weren't as strong a team as we've been. We all know that, but hopefully we can get there.
Steve, this is the time of year that folks seem to make coaching changes. It's happened all across the country this week and last week. How do you handle that with the kids that you're recruiting? What has their reaction been? And is there any different or better way to do it?
The part about do you hire a coach before or after signing days, that's the question. Yeah, I guess you could go either way on it. I asked several people, and most people just said, wait till recruiting's over. You got your players, but I don't think it made any difference, to tell you the truth, on the class we signed. I don't think it made any difference at all. So as far as the future, well, we'll just have to wait and see on that. I mean, we all plan to be here for a while. We're recruiting for the future and looking forward to this year at the same time.
Steve Spurrier, John Hoke, Lorenzo Ward, your thoughts on what they had to say? Will it work? Back in a moment. 800-956-7266 if you'd like to join us. What do you think of the hire of John Hoke? He's going to get $750,000 total in his contract, plus various incentives that could push him up near $1 million if the Gamecocks do well as a team and if the defense does well as a unit. So he stands to do very well at South Carolina. And if the defense takes off and does extremely well, a few years down the road, does John Hoke all of a sudden become elevated as a potential Spurrier replacement?
Let's take a look at this another way. Spurrier wanted to make the hire after the recruiting season.
Mm-hmm. As all coaches try to do.
Let's put the shoe on the other foot and say John Hoke didn't make his decision after recruiting season. Coach, let me see what kind of talent you got on your front line you able to sign. Let's see Lewis and Jim Cosby. I'll come. Okay. I want to wait to see if you have somebody on that defensive line before I give you a yes
I don't
or no.
know. I don't know. It seems to me based on, J.C. Sherbert had the story very early that Hoke was a target of Spurrier.
Yeah.
And so I think that deal got done pretty quickly.
The third time is like, the charm,
and it seemed like Hoke,
3 times.
Hoke, turned off all interest in other jobs, NFL jobs, college jobs. It was very quiet. Spurrier would hint at something being done, wouldn't say it, of course. So I think this thing was done pretty quickly, and they just sat on it. And Spurrier was, as he said in his press conference, he talked to people and was told, don't announce anything until after signing day. But, they didn't really screw any kids here because Grady Brown's not gone. He's going to be with the program. Any kid that he recruited will have access to him. He'll be able to – I'm not sure exactly in his role what he can and cannot do in terms of coaching. Can he be in meetings? Can he break down film? Can he go to a training table with them? Can he go to the weight room? I'm not sure what kind of restrictions. Maybe there are none, except he can't be on the field doing active recruiting.
Right.
So, they didn't lie really to any kid unless a kid said, hey, is Grady Brown going to actually be coaching me? If they, answer that question in the positive, then they did lie. If they said, don't know yet, don't know what our plans are, but he is still with the program and is still going to be around any player that he happened to recruit. Same thing with Ward, same thing with Botkin, same thing with Deke Adams. So, they don't have anything to hide from the standpoint that they did this after signing day because no coach has been run off.
Well, it almost seems that he's almost anticipating another coach may get another job or something because he said he'll be back on. But I will say this, the one key thing I think when you heard Hope talked about, you read about him, is zone blitzing. If anything, from a strategic standpoint, South Carolina did not have the talent on the front line. We all know that. The talent they did have was young or too small. The other key is I think they gave passers too much time just from a basic scheme standpoint because they refused to all-out blitz a lot. And I think these zone blitzes, it'd be interesting to see how this is done because I've always said I would rather give a quarterback have a receiver open but have no time to see him versus giving him time by covering zones instead of pressuring him to make a quick decision.
Well, I think with a better secondary and a more experienced secondary, they'll be more willing to blitz and trust those guys on the back end. All right, back to the phones, and it's RJ in Columbia listening to us on The Point here in Columbia. Hello, RJ. How are you?
Hey, Corn. How are you guys?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I got a couple comments, but anyway, when Spurrier was, during that Kentucky game, and he comes out there and he basically says this: there will be no changes in my staff. We may bring somebody on, but there'll be no changes, and that's exactly what he said. And when Lorenzo Ward is not calling the plays anymore, and Grady Brown's no longer the defensive backs coach, there's a change in the staff. There's a change in his philosophy, what he's doing. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong, what he did. Maybe he needed to do that, but. To just come out there and point up to the he said, all these recruits, I'm telling you right now, there's not going to be a change in the staff. There has been a change. So,
I mean, you're nitpicking a little. I mean, I guess we're arguing semantics at this point. To me, change would be you fire Lorenzo Ward and he's gone. He's like not a part of the program anymore, and bring in another guy. I mean, he did say they had a chance to add somebody, which they did. Everybody knows that means you're going to have to and he said we're going to have to we might reorganize some things. We'll see how it all plays out. And I think he
He
told some
said there would not be. He said there would not be a change in the staff. Now, if I was a guy and I knew that Coach Ward.
No. Let me back you up. Now, what he said was, I'm not firing any coaches. I might add coaches. Is how he put it.
And we might reorganize things. As you all you knew, if you added somebody, they're going to have to move somebody around.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear what you're saying. Obviously, there being some changes, but I don't think he was being disingenuous.
Yeah.
I think he stuck to what he was saying. He hadn't fired anybody. He's rearranged some things. He's added a coach. He said he may add another coach to the staff in some form or fashion. So I think he's sticking with what he said. But
Ellis Johnson, line one.
We'll be back in a moment. Recruiting. More calls coming up, 800-956-7266. That's our number here on Sports Talk, presented by the Palmetto Project. The federal health insurance marketplace is going to close on February 15th for Americans looking for affordable health insurance. Find out how you can join the thousands of South Carolinians who've already signed up by visiting healthcare.gov. Note from Clemson, Kellen Jones, reserve linebackers, leaving the program, first reported by the ClemsonInsider.com. Redshirt junior from Houston, played in all 13 games for the Tigers last season, had 21 tackles, forced a fumble. The report says he's giving up football but could resume his career elsewhere later on. This was a highly recruited linebacker coming out of high school. First went to Michigan, I think, then to Oklahoma, where he was there with Brent Venables, and then transferred to Clemson. Has had some knee injuries as well, but was
he played in every game. But, you know, these things happen. They do. I mean, I know Clemson fans when some guys were leaving South Carolina.
So is this the case of a player being run off?
What's going on?
Like
the rats
Columbia?
are jumping off the ship. No, this happens. I mean, it's not uncommon for guys that want to play, think they're running out of time. They realize, well, where do I want to go? Do I want to go somewhere where I'm going to make 21 tackles, or do I want to go somewhere where I have a chance to start and have a big final year?
But you would think, Clemson's losing two starting linebackers. He was one of the first reserves. You would think that he would hang in there and try and earn some
they
playing time.
told him he wouldn't have the opportunity.
Does he's being run? You're saying he's being run off?
No, he was just told.
When you're told you don't have the opportunity,
He's
you're being
tired of
run
running
off.
off.
You run off.
Maybe he wants to chase around girls his last year.
Brian Bratton, one of the greatest receivers and return specialists in Furman history, is going to join the program as receivers coach. Bruce Fowler made that announcement today. Now to recruiting. Linebacker Trey Lamar, Roswell, Georgia, who's now 6'4", 240, up to 24 offers. His top 5 remain the same. Clemson, USC, Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi State in no order. He was at Clemson's junior day and spent a lot of time with Brent Venables. He's pretty close with Brent Venables thus far, has a good relationship with him. He's been to USC twice. He's in regular contact with recruiter G.A. Mangus. Plans to attend junior day at Alabama February 28th. And will go to one at Auburn March 7th. Does not plan an early decision. Had 127 tackles and 4 sacks last season. And USC has offered athlete Levanta Taylor from Virginia Beach, Virginia. There you go with recruiting. Check it out regularly on our website, sportstalksc.com. All right, top of the hour break. Great second hour. A lot of basketball coming up. Brad Brownell, Frank Martin, Larry Davis, and I'm picking the USC women to beat UConn tonight. It's Snowy Store's final score. USC women 58, Connecticut women 52.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, Duke and Florida State. ACC game of the night. It's underway down in Tallahassee. Of course, South Carolina and UConn already getting plenty of hype on ESPN2. Live coverage from Stores is already underway on ESPN2. And it's the big showdown between number 1 and number 2 upcoming. 800-956-7266 if you'd like to join in on the program. We've got a lot of basketball coming up for you in just a moment. Brad Brownell will talk about the Tigers coming off their loss at Miami yesterday. Quick turnaround for them. 7 o'clock tip-off tomorrow night for their game with Notre Dame. I mean, how does the ACC, the NCAA, ESPN, the folks that conspire to put these schedules together, how do they expect teams to prepare and get ready when you have a team play a 6:30 game in Miami that doesn't end till 8:30? It's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock before they get out of Miami, probably get back into Clemson 1 or 2 in the morning. Got to go to class, and then you got to turn around the day after and play a 7 o'clock tip-off. How do they expect the quality of basketball to be any good when you have that? And how do you expect the kids to go to class and do what they need to do from the student-athlete standpoint? But that's what they require for the television purposes, to get every game on television.
Suck it up. That's just like Major League Baseball teams complaining about playing the Sunday night game, especially if they're on the East Coast or West Coast and have to go back to the other coast.
Or the NFL teams. I mean, the teams that have to play those Thursday night games after playing a Sunday game.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough for those guys to get healed up. That's why the quality of the games on Thursday night haven't been real good.
They're just trying to get through it. That's what they're doing.
They know they've got an extended time off after that if they can just get through it. So that's the.
But do you notice that they make the ACC and or the SEC when they're making these slates? It seems like the Clemsons and the Florida States and the Miamis and the South Carolinas and the Mississippi States, they tend to get
the crummy schedule,
the more 9 noon games, the quicker turnaround games, the Sunday to Tuesday games.
Oh yeah.
You know, they don't seem to throw as many of those on the Kentuckys and the Floridas and the Dukes and the North Carolinas. It just doesn't seem like that happens to me.
By the way, looking at Clemson's football roster now with the deletion of Kellen Jones from the senior class, that puts the Tigers at 11 scholarship seniors by my count. So obviously, and it's still and they're under the 85 total right now with the incoming class of let me take that back. I may not have this up to date. They're right on the number with the deletion of Kellen Jones, or maybe let's see, 23, maybe at 84 overall. I got to go back and check my freshman list, but it does give them an extra scholarship to use in the upcoming class when their number is going to be tight.
Well, we're still not a good offensive team. We just
And just looking back at those Clemson numbers on the roster that I have for them, right now a total of 58 returning players, and I'm counting 25 newcomers in the class, even though they are now 26 with Amir Trapp, but he's supposed to gray shirt, at least at this point. But 58 along with the 25 newcomers, that'd give them 83 total.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd be 2 under the number. So, of course, they're holding one spot as well for Denzel Johnson. If he makes it, that'll give him 84. They're holding a spot for him. And of course, they could add somebody else to the scholarship list. So that's how I see it. I'm not saying this is 100% because sometimes we have players on scholarship who no longer are, or some who are that we don't know about. But I think I'm pretty close on where things stand with the Tigers as far as their roster is concerned.
Well, here's something interesting. We are more than 5 minutes into this game, Duke and Florida State, and it's still 2-0 Florida State. Duke has not scratched in the first 5 minutes and 16 seconds of this game.
What also is interesting here, too, is that Dawn Staley? Who is that?
That's Dawn Staley.
Is that live?
Yes.
So here we are 45 minutes from tip-off, and she's doing
taped.
No, look at the people in the background.
Yeah.
That can't be live, though. Yeah,
No,
yeah. Okay, that can't be live.
Yeah, it's probably taped.
There's an interview with Dawn Staley going on right now.
Well, her team's warming up, and there's fans in the stands.
Yeah, but look how empty it is. I mean, I could have been. You think 45 minutes before tip-off, she's doing a live spot on SportsCenter?
No.
No.
I think it's probably taped.
It says
15 minutes
live
ago.
up there.
They lie about everything about live. Everything's live. Everything's breaking and everything's live. All right, so
it's probably live. I see it.
They're doing it up big, even on the flagship station last night. They had a big preview of this game.
Mhm.
It's regardless of sport, when you
So
have
what's your-
1 versus 2.
I've got USC winning. What did I say? 58-52.
Yeah,
What do you
pulled
have?
that number right out of your rectum. I'm going with.
Ouch, K-Mac.
That's where
that
you.
kinda hurts.
Oh boy. Yeah, we have the Frank Martin sigh.
Yeah, can we? Can I state, man? What's my reaction to that comment? That's what it feels like if you pull numbers out of your rectum. I guess.
But I'm going with the experience and the home team tonight. I'm going with the UConn Huskies and that swell guy Gino Auriemma. That looks like the kind of guy that just you want to punch in the face, but he does have a pretty good team.
Steak man, what was the first sound that K-Mac made when he came out of surgery and the kidney was gone? What was the first sound he made? Yeah, I'm gonna mess with it.
See, you give a child a new toy. This is what happens.
All right, Brad. What's your pick?
I'm picking the home team in this. I think UConn wins this by 6 or 8 points. I'll go. I'm going to go up into the 70s. I'm going to say it's going to be 74 to 68.
I think free throw shooting down the stretch will be key, and we know USC's women have had their issues. Just getting the right people to the line will be important for them. But, both of these teams play great defense. That's why I think it's going to be a game in the 50s. I think they're going to clamp down on each other.
Well, the interesting thing about this ball game is we look at both teams, and they do have good size. I think South Carolina probably has a little bit more size than UConn, but you have Asia Wilson coming off the bench, and let's not forget that Brianna Stewart is almost like Asia Wilson. I mean, she's a sophomore, and she was I guess she was the player of the tournament last year. But the equalizer in this game, or the X factor, has to be Bianca Cuevas, the rookie from the Bronx, New York. Corn, if I had to compare to anybody, it's when NC State used to put Spud Webb on the floor, and just this gnat flying over, and you can't stop it. It just goes one speed. It'll be interesting to see how they try to slow her down in this game.
Well, two big numbers stand out here when you look at the tail of the tape. UConn holds opponents to 29% shooting. USC is very good at that too, 33%. But the other thing is UConn makes about 72% of its free throws, USC 52% from the line. That, in a tight ball game, that's going to be a big, big difference.
How many free throws do you think you could make out of 10, Corn, if we went to a gym right now?
10.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under on that
10 out of 10. All right, let's.
What would Frank Martin's reaction be to that? Corn answering the question that way?
10 out of 10?
Yeah, that's what he would think.
All right, Brad Brownell on the ACC conference call earlier today. Tigers had a tough night last night, scored, 45 points or so in that loss to Miami. And the obvious to Brownell is the offense ain't clicking right now.
Well, we're still not a good offensive team. We just the thing we have done better is we've taken care of the ball. We've gotten a little bit better shots, and we've had a little bit. We've had some good runs. We've had good 8-minute periods where we've played really well and maybe had some timely shooting and had some spurts that have helped us where we've made a few threes. We're not a good shooting team, and because of that, it becomes very difficult at times. When we string a couple together, and sometimes one guy will make one, and we might string 2 or 3 together, and it kind of gives us a little jolt to create some distance from some teams, and then we just kind of hang on for dear life. To be honest with you, I do think our turnovers have gone down a little bit as the year's gone on, and we've gotten into league play and done a better job of maybe not turning the ball over and being a little more efficient. But our consistency hasn't been very good this year offensively, and it's a problem for us.
You look at Blossom game as well as Hall. What can you say about where they're at this point in the season and any type of improvement that you've seen from their game specifically?
Well, I think Rod's just very steady, and he's one of those guys that kind of just does what your team needs to win more times than not. There are times we need him to be a little more aggressive. Sometimes he's been able to deliver in that role, and other times he's not. But it's not his nature to go try to score 15 points in a game. It's just, he's just not wired that way. But he is wired in a way to try to do what he thinks he needs to do to help your team win. And his toughness is certainly a factor in games. And I think he's really helped us that way. I think Jerron's just an improving player. He's a guy that, continues to work hard on his skill level. He's a very good athlete. He's a guy who's 2 years removed from, breaking his leg and compound fracture, much like Kevin Ware, and having to overcome 2 surgeries and a bunch of adversity. And he's made great improvements this year from his freshman year. And, he's starting to drive the ball well. I think he's finishing more plays around 8 to 10 feet, improving his shooting. So he's an improved player for us that I think is having a very good year.
You've seen Rod and DeMarcus and Landry. Their shooting numbers have just continued to go down in conference play. Is there anything you can put your finger on, just how they've struggled so far the last few weeks?
There really isn't. I thought we got the ball to Landry in some good positions. Now, Tanya Jakiri is a very good defender, and so he caused some problems for Landry down low. But I don't really have one thing. I think some of it's just a little bit of confidence with DeMarcus and Landry. I think had some times where they've played okay, and then other times where they're not playing quite as well, and we're kind of in one of those little doldrums with them that they're just not shooting it as well, not feeling as comfortable, as confident, and sometimes you just got to play your way through that. I don't think it's anything drastic in terms of they're getting worse shots, or I do think DeMarcus presses sometimes and forces some things. Like last night, he probably took 2 or 3 shots that he probably shouldn't take, and so as a result, he's 1 for 8 instead of maybe 1 for 5, and those numbers look even worse. And sometimes when you force a shot and miss, then when you get an open one, you don't feel as good about it because you've just missed one, and it's one you shouldn't have taken in the first place. But it's a little bit hard for our team. We just don't have a consistent scorer that everybody can kind of has to double team or have to pay a big attention to, and so it helps other guys. Like KJ kind of helped some other guys last year at times. We just don't have that this year, so we've really had to bump and grind offensively and just kind of play through the struggles of some guys and hope that other guys can kind of turn it on at times.
All right, Tigers 14-9, 6-5 in the ACC. Still a chance to stay in the upper half of the league with a couple of home games coming up. Notre Dame tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, and then Virginia Tech. You talked about those start times. High noon on Saturday against Virginia Tech. Back in a moment. All right, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Florida State leading Duke 11-10 midway through their game. And, boy, I tell you what, I give ESPN credit. They're going heads over heels for this women's showdown between USC and Connecticut. Full, hour preview leading up to the game. Looks like, is it Dave O'Brien on the call? One of their top announcers will be on the call.
Oh, yeah,
with,
their number one women's team.
With the who's the blonde-haired lady that does
everything?
Yeah.
Doris
Holly Rowe.
No, Doris. Doris
But
Burke.
you mentioned Holly Rowe. She's there. She'll be on the sideline. So they've got a three-person team. And there she is right there.
Yeah, they got this thing heavily covered. So we'll see if South Carolina can live up to the expectations and play up to what they have to play up to win at a place like Connecticut. 1991, I think it was 1991, one of the most enjoyable weekends I've had covering sports. You had the Clemson men and the Clemson women in the NCAA tournament at the same time in Connecticut. The men were in Hartford and the women were in Stores.
Mm-hmm.
So I covered the men and the women for our network. And Clemson won. The men won their game, their first game. They beat BYU in the NCAA tournament opener. I think it was BYU in the NCAA tournament opener. No, take that back. It was LaSalle. Was it LaSalle or BYU? Won that game. And then the next night, the Clemson women with Jim Davis, the coach, played over at Stores. So I got to go to Stores. That's a very nice arena. It was relatively new back then. And it was built underground so that you walk in at street level and then all the seats are down. Nothing is up. All the seats are down, which is kind of neat. And a lot of glass. You walk by this on the sidewalk, you look right into the arena, basically. So it's kind of neat. And then the next day over in Hartford, Clemson beat, I think it was BYU or LaSalle, one or the other. They played those two teams. And then, of course, they went to East Rutherford for the next round. Clemson women got beat, by the way. The men went to East Rutherford, where they fell victim
to the long pass.
Connecticut. Yeah, to the Connecticut men on that Hail Mary pass and shot at the
Scott Burrell, who is a pitcher, I think, in, I want to say, the Red Sox minor league system. They put him into the game. He was about 6'7". He ended up playing for the Hornets a few years. He was drafted by the Hornets in the second round. And he threw that big baseball pass to Tate George, who I still think didn't have time enough to turn around and shoot that ball. But it counted.
I'll never forget the look on the faces of like Eldon Campbell and Dale Davis. Those guys were like, what just happened?
Eldon Campbell, I think, still stunned.
What just happened? Clemson was so close to getting to the Elite Eight.
And then UConn got stunned by Christian Laettner the next game.
Going to chat with Larry Davis, the former Gamecock star who signed with Dean Smith way back when. That's coming up next. Yeah, just 3 undefeateds left in Division I basketball. 1 on the men's side, that's Kentucky. 2 on the women's side, USC and Princeton. And, of course, USC hoping to stay undefeated tonight up at Connecticut. Going to talk with former Gamecock star Larry Davis in just a moment here on Sports Talk. This is presented by the Palmetto Project. The federal health insurance marketplace will be closing February 15th for Americans looking for affordable health insurance. Find out how you can join the thousands of South Carolinians who've already signed up by visiting healthcare.gov. I think we were all saddened by the news yesterday, the passing of Dean Smith. If you are an older person around the state of South Carolina, Gamecock fan, Tiger fan, and you had to deal with your teams facing North Carolina all those years, you didn't think much positive about Dean Smith. If you're a younger person, you've heard the legends. But me personally, as an observer, nothing but the greatest respect for Dean Smith with how he ran his program, and what impressed me the most, how his players consider themselves part of a huge family, and that relationship never ended, even if they were years removed from playing basketball for him. Larry Davis, when he was a star at Denmark Oler and later a year in prep school, became the first player from South Carolina to be recruited by and signed by Dean Smith. You know, he recruited nationally, didn't look too hard into South Carolina, but he saw Larry. He was a player he wanted, and he eventually got him, and Larry spent 2 years there before transferring to South Carolina. And he joins us now, the head coach at Northwestern High School up in Rock Hill. Larry, how are you?
Fine. How you doing?
We're doing fine. Doing fine. Thank you for being with us. And first of all, your thoughts about the passing of Dean Smith when you heard the news. What sort of things came to your mind?
Hurtful, tearful, almost breaking down, and just to know what Coach Smith meant to me and so many other young men that passed through the Carolina program. It was a sad day for us all. And, you know, the things that he's meant for not only basketball, but just for society, and the things that he stood for is just all around class act.
What do you recall about your first meeting with him?
Being a situation where I was actually born in North Carolina, in Concord, North Carolina, so I grew up idolizing and watching Coach Smith and all the former players that came through North Carolina. And, you know, for him to come to, after moving there to South Carolina at a young age, I actually had a chance to still follow North Carolina. And that was the school of my dreams. And to have Coach Smith come down and want to recruit a little kid from Denmark, South Carolina, it was just, it was overwhelming. And it was shocking, and you know, I had to pinch myself time and time again to ask me, is this really happening? But it was just an honor, and I was blessed to be able to come through his program.
Did he have to do much recruiting for a player like you or any great player that he went to see, because his program was so good and people lined up wanting to go there? Was there much of a hard sell?
It really wasn't, to be honest with you. I mean, when he came knocking on most doors, he pretty much got what he came for. And, you know, Coach Smith, you know, during the whole process of recruiting, he talked very little about basketball. You know, that's shocking, because, you know, when you look at the program and you look at what he's built, that's what you want to talk about. But he talked about, you know, getting an education and making a valuable contribution to society, and, you know, being able to, you know, support your family with honest living and those type things. I mean, you take for granted. And when you're a 17-year-old senior in high school, you don't quite understand, you know, why he's talking about life after basketball. But you know, he puts things in perspective. He helps you to see it, and then he grooms you for the day that's going to come fast.
No doubt about it. Talking with Larry Davis, former signee and player for Dean Smith, of course, ended up at South Carolina. What was it like in practice with him? How would he break down the game for you guys, and how much were you amazed by some of the things that he would draw up in practice or in the heat of the moment of a game?
Well, Phil, to be honest with you, one of the biggest assets that he had was his preparation and the organization. I mean, when you step on the floor, I mean, during practice time, they were set to when you had water breaks and how long your water breaks were. It was that detailed. I mean, you're talking about a man who, when we went in practice, you know, the last 5 minutes of practice, we would practice different scenarios in a game. Up 3 points with, 30 seconds left. What we want to do when we're down 5 points with 2 minutes left. The shots we want to get, the plays that we want to call, the defensive calls that we want to be in. I mean, so when you practice those things on a regular basis, when game time comes, by you being prepared, it puts you in a comfort level, and that's why you see so many of those teams in the past. They weather the storm and they're able to face adversity because they've been through the moment, and he's prepared them for it. And I don't think there's any better coach in America that prepared the way he did, and it's just an honor for me to have that opportunity to sit here, sit in his practices and even watch the game as a player my freshman year, to see things the way he broke things down in practice, the way it was relevant to the game. And, when you talk about things like that, it really develops a comfort level for a player and puts you in a position where you can have a lot more success.
I know winning breeds great relationships, and you guys, before you, with you, since you at North Carolina, a lot of winning over the years there. So you can understand why everybody had this big love affair with the North Carolina program, but it must go beyond that. Why, to this day, players like you and even, Eddie Fogler, who was, 30 years ahead of you or so, give or take a few years there at North Carolina, to this day, he would only refer to Dean Smith as Coach Smith. You, in this conversation, only refer to him as Coach Smith, and I'm sure that's the case up and down the line with every former player and assistant coach that he had. Why this lifelong reverence for him years after your relationship day-to-day with him ended?
Well, it's just a respect factor. He treated you as a person with a lot of respect. He was one of those guys that was genuine. You felt his caring, and you knew that he was in your corner no matter what. And when you get that type of when you build that type of trust in a coach, and you've seen him, go to war and go to battle for you, and not to mention, how he carries himself, and it's just one of those things where it's just you earn a great deal of respect for someone like that, and it puts you in a situation where you never lose that. And when you look at it, I was talking to Coach Fogler this morning. I had a conversation with him, and one of the things that we shared was, Coach Smith. It didn't matter, who you were, whether you were the last person on the bench or whether you were the star player on his team. He treated everyone equal. And when you have that type of demeanor from your head coach, the respect value, it heightens and it grows, and it puts you in a situation where you always have respect for that person.
Larry, hang on 1 second, if you don't mind. Got a quick commercial break. We'll come right back to you. Spend a few more minutes talking about Coach Dean Smith in just a moment. And we're back on Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, Tom Hayes, visiting with former USC standout Larry Davis about his first college coach, Dean Smith, who passed away at the age of 83 on Saturday. Larry, when you made the decision to transfer to South Carolina, what was it like talking with Coach Smith about that? What kind of things did he have to say about you at that time about your decision to leave to go to South Carolina?
It was actually tough. I had an easier time telling my mom than Coach Smith. You know, I kind of went to him in the beginning, a couple weeks into the season, and you know, I noticed that I wasn't playing as much as I anticipated going into my sophomore year. And we were very talented. We actually had more talent on my sophomore year than we did my freshman year. We had 13 Mr. Basketball from various states on that team, so playing time was hard to come by. And with me seeing that, you know, I had already made up on my mind that I wanted to transfer. And I went to Coach Smith around Christmas time, and I said, Coach, I'm not happy. I'm struggling a little bit with my confidence. I'm struggling with, you know, just being here. And I think, you know, I'm wanting to leave and transfer somewhere. And he said, Larry, you know, I understand. I can't say that, you know, I blame you, but he said that I'm caught in a web and playing time with several guys. And he said that, you know, let's just see how it plays out. You never know what's going to happen from day one until the end of the season. And basically, you know, wait until the end of the season to discuss it. And after the season was over, and I went back in and talked to him, and he said, I tell you what, if you, and this is how fair he was, he said, if you feel like you want to leave, he said, you write down 5 places that you think that you would go and you would be able to get playing time right away. He said, because I'm not letting you go someplace that you won't be able to get 30 minutes for, 30 minutes a game in. And I put down a list for him, and I gave it to him. He went through the list. He said, no, you can't go here. You can't go here. You can't go here. He said, now this may be a good situation for you. And, you know, it was the University of South Carolina, and Coach Fogler had just, you know, received a job there. And, you know, he made a phone call for me, and the rest is history.
Now, as far as Coach Smith, and of course you played for one of his ex-players and the guy who sat on the bench for more than a decade with him, and Coach Fogler, do you catch yourself, Larry, or how much time do you catch yourself seeing that the way you shaped your coaching career at the high school level? Have you caught yourself saying, wait a minute, that's the call the dean would have made, or Coach Fogler? How much did his influence affect your coaching?
It was actually very, very similar. When you see how they use their timeouts, when you see the strategy within the game, how they manage the game, how they call certain plays, get a feel for the game, and they call certain plays. And it was a very comfortable situation for me to go in, because most of the offensive and the defensive calls were the same. And so I didn't have to adjust. And actually, I was able to help some of the younger guys who were just getting there, like Melvin and BJ, to try to understand, you know, what the offense was, we were trying to get out of the offense.
Are you using Are you using those concepts at the high school level in your coaching?
I still use the same context. And it's funny because, I mean, I catch myself a lot of times, and, you know, I have a lot of Coach Fogler ways when coaching. But I have a lot of Coach Smith ways as well. You know, Coach Smith used to kill you with sarcasm. He would never use any profanity or anything like that, but he would kill you with sarcasm, or, you know, he would ask the team to grade your shot, and you would dare go against anything that Coach Smith said, because that wouldn't work. That wouldn't fare well with you. But it was just one of those things where a lot of it isn't etched in our brains. You know, the same calls. My teams all stand up and point to the guy who made the pass, and when someone comes out of the bench and give an effort for the team, you know, I want everybody standing up on the bench to applaud that player coming out of the game. So a lot of those same things I try to implement within my program.
Larry, we can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts with us about Coach Dean Smith. We really appreciate it, and good luck to you, Northwestern, and the rest of this basketball season. Larry Davis, former Gamecock star, of course, began his college career at North Carolina, visiting with us here on Sports Talk. All right, thanks again to Larry Davis for sharing his thoughts with us. I do want to give you just a couple of minutes with USC basketball coach Frank Martin from his press conference today, coming off the loss to Vanderbilt. The Gamecocks at home tomorrow night, 7 o'clock tip against Missouri for the battle to stay out of last in the SEC. Missouri's 1-9 in league play, USC's 2-8. Here's Martin talking about his team as they ready for tomorrow night.
I continue to be extremely excited about our guys. We've got to figure out, I think as a staff we've been doing a better job on trying, to create better leadership. I've been talking about lack of leadership all year, and I didn't think we as a staff did as good a job as we needed to in the early months of the season. I think we've done a better job as of late. And I think our players are starting to respond to that a little bit better. But I tell you what I told the team yesterday. I've never been on a bench where you are in total control of a game and for 30 minutes and then play the last 10 as if there are 5 guys from the local rec center that just met and went into scrimmage against an organized team. I've never been on a bench where that took place. And, and that continues to be our problem when I refer to leadership. We're great around each other, real good guys. They do everything they're asked to do. But when things get real difficult, we've yet to have a guy that's the voice that's willing to stand up and embrace and take ownership for that moment. And then, we'll keep fighting till we're, till somebody's willing to raise their hand and take ownership of that moment. So we can overcome these hard games that we're involved in that we can't close out.
Does that go back to what you said after the game about players having the courage to take a shot in a tight situation?
Yeah. Phil, it's one of the greatest quotes that, as a human being you look at. It was Michael Jordan. I don't remember the numbers, but the one he says, I have succeeded X number of times. That's because I failed X number of times. That's powerful. That means you're willing to embrace that responsibility. I shared a story with our players yesterday. My second year at Kansas State, Jacob Pullen, we played at Oregon, was 2 for 19 with 9 turnovers from the field. And we're down 2 with 30 seconds to play, and I called timeout, and I ran a play for Denny Clemente.
Too bad we can't finish that story. Yes. Pullen did recover to have a great game and a great career. You can hear all that on our website. We'll see you tomorrow night from Clemson and from here in Columbia. Good night.